September 1848. You're pressing explosive powder into a rock with an iron rod. 43 inches long, 13 pounds. A spark. The blast fires that iron up through your cheek, behind your eye, and straight out the top of your skull. It lands 80 feet away and you sit up. You speak. You walk to the cart. The man this happened to became the most famous brain injury patient in history. And almost everything you were taught about what that iron did to his mind is a lie. His name was Phineas Gage. And if you've ever sat through a psychology class, you've met him. Gage is the textbook case, the railroad worker whose brain got speared by an iron rod in 1848, the man who, the story goes, was never the same again. He's the reason we believe something enormous. That the person you are, your temper, your judgment, the whole of your character, isn't floating somewhere in your soul. It's wired into the meat of your brain. Damage the right piece, and you change the person. That single idea props up most of modern neuroscience, and it leans, harder than on almost anything else, on this one man. He went in kind, capable. The favorite of his crew. The iron came out. And so, supposedly, did Phineas Gage. In his place, the story says, was someone cruel, someone reckless, someone his own friends swore they no longer recognized. And that's where everyone stops telling it. The iron, the change. No longer Gage, credits roll, except he didn't die that day in 1848. Phineas Gage lived another 11 and a half years. 11 years, the textbooks leave almost completely blank. And what he did with them doesn't just go missing from the story. It turns the whole story inside out. So forget how the iron destroyed Phineas Gage. The real question is what he did once everyone stopped watching. To see what got erased, you have to start with what actually happened. In the summer of 1848, Phineas Gage was 25 and very, very good at his job. He was a construction foreman for the Rutland and Burlington Railroad, blasting a path for new track through the hills of Cavendish, Vermont. His men liked him. His bosses called him the most capable foreman they had, a man with, in the language of the day, a well-balanced mind. The work was lethal, and it ran on a careful routine. To break rock, you drilled a hole, poured in gunpowder, covered it with sand, and used a heavy iron rod to gently tamp it all down before the blast. On the 13th of September, the routine broke. The sand was missing. When Gage's tamping iron came down on bare powder, it threw a spark. And 43 inches of iron turned into a spear. It went in under his left cheekbone, passed behind his eye, tore through the front of his brain, and came out the top of his skull, landing in the dirt yards away. By everything 1848 understood about the human body, Phineas Gage should have been dead before he hit the ground. He wasn't. He didn't even pass out. He was talking within minutes. And when the local doctor finally reached him, Gage looked up and said, perfectly calm, "Here's business enough for you." That doctor was John Harlow. And what Harlow pulled off was, for the time, almost as astonishing as the survival. This was decades before anyone knew germs existed. For 73 days, he cleaned the wound by hand, beat back the infections as they came, and flat out refused to let a patient die that any other doctor would have given up on. By the new year, the hole in Gage's head had closed. He could walk, he could talk. Physically, against everything medicine knew, he had survived the impossible. And that should have been the happy ending. It wasn't. Here's the part that's true, and we shouldn't soften it. The man who walked away wasn't quite the man who got hurt. Harlow watched it happen. The steady, level-headed foreman came back restless and foul-mouthed. He'd make a plan and ditch it an hour later. He stopped deferring to anybody. He even lost his feel for money, Harlow once offered him $1,000 for a handful of pebbles Gage had pulled out of a stream, and Gage wouldn't trade them. And yes, he carried that iron, the one that went through his skull, with him for the rest of his life. People hear that and call it madness. I don't. People keep things, a token, a reminder, a private little memento mori. You probably own one yourself. His old bosses wouldn't give him his job back. His friends, reaching for words, landed on the line that buried him. He was no longer Gage. All of that is real. But watch what happens next, because this is the moment the truth gets stolen. Gage was done changing. The story wasn't. Over the next 150 years, no longer Gage kept swelling in the mouths of people who never met the man and had no new evidence at all. He became a drunk, then a violent one, then a penniless vagrant dying in a gutter. And almost none of it traces back to Harlow or to a single person who actually knew him. So where did it come from? Mostly from scientists. People with a theory and no proof. Who needed Gage to be the case that nailed it down? A man whose whole soul got wiped out by a bar of iron. That was clean. It proved their map of the brain. It was far too useful to fact-check. You know the old line, history is written by the winners? This wasn't even that. Gage didn't get written by a winner. He got written by whoever happened to outlive him. And they wrote the version that flattered their own theory. And that lie has a cost, and the cost lands on the living. If the most famous brain injury in history proves that a head wound finishes you for good, no road back, what is that telling every person sitting in a rehab ward tonight? It's telling them to quit before they start. Last time we told you about the first man ever cured of HIV. Someone carrying the virus and a cancer at the same time. A man everyone expected to lose, who went on to live years longer than anyone predicted. Medicine loves a lost cause it can bury. Gage was one of those. And the burial left a few things out. It left out that he was back working his family's farm within months. It left out the year and a half he spent in a New Hampshire stable, relearning horses and teams. And it very carefully left out where he went next. Because if you actually follow him there, the monster falls apart in your hands. Phineas Gage went to Chile. Around 1852, a man building a stagecoach line out of Valparaiso needed a driver he could trust with absolutely everything. And the man he chose to sail to the far side of the world and hand the reins to was Gage, the wreck. The one too broken to hold a job. Sit with what that job really was. A long-haul coach driver in 1850s Chile was up before dawn, harnessing a full team of horses, loading the passengers and their luggage, collecting the fares, then running a brutal 100-mile route through country he didn't know. On a clock, in a language he hadn't been born into, every single day. You do not hand that to a man who can't plan, can't focus, can't be trusted with other people's lives. It may be the single most demanding job you could have found anywhere on earth in that century. He did it for 7 years. He learned Spanish. He learned a whole country. And a doctor who knew him well in those years would later say that he could find, in Gage's mind, no impairment whatsoever. So what actually happened to him? The tidy answer is that his brain slowly healed. And the relentless daily structure of the job was the thing that rebuilt it, that the routine itself was the medicine. Maybe. But there's another reading, and honestly, I think it's the better one. Maybe Gage was never broken at all. Think about it. A man feels a bar of iron pass clean through his own head and survives it. What if he simply stopped performing? Stopped saying the polite thing? Stopped deferring, stopped playing the part the people around him expected him to play. And we, hunting for damage, looked at that and called it a destroyed mind. What if it wasn't ruin? What if it was just a man who'd stared straight down the barrel of his own death and quietly stopped caring what the room thought of him. We can't know for certain. That's the honest answer, and I'm not going to pretend otherwise. But he held a life together for 7 years in a foreign country doing one of the hardest jobs of his age. That is not the resume of a wreck. It didn't last forever. His health gave out, and in 1859 he came home to his mother and sister in San Francisco. The seizures started a few months after that. They got worse through the spring, and in May of 1860 they took him. 36 years old. He had outlived the iron through his skull by 11 and a half years, and he would have stayed a myth forever if it weren't for two objects. After he died, his skull and his iron went to Harvard, and they sit there to this day. And then, nearly 150 years later, something surfaced that no one knew existed: a photograph. For 30 years, it had been sitting in a private collection under one word: the Whaler. A sharp-dressed man with a scar across his brow and one eye closed, holding what everybody assumed was a harpoon. The owners put it online, and whaling experts told them, plainly, that whatever that man was holding, it was no harpoon. So who was he? It was a stranger on the internet, someone who recognized the shape of that iron bar from a story they'd once heard, who first said the name out loud: Phineas Gage. The owners looked closer, and running down the length of the bar in his hands was an inscription. It read, "This is the bar that was shot through the head of Mr. Phineas P. Gage." They matched the scars to a mask cast from his living face. It was him. The first time the world had ever laid eyes on Phineas Gage. And it is not the face of a ruin. He's calm. He's well-dressed. He's holding the very thing that was supposed to have ended him. And he looks, honestly, like a man who won. So here's what the most famous brain injury in history actually leaves you with. Once you put back the pages somebody tore out. We didn't only do this to Gage on purpose. It's also just how memory works. Ask anyone to name their worst day, and it comes instantly. Ask them for their best, and they go quiet, searching for it. The wound always carves deeper than the joy. So of course we remembered the iron and forgot the 11 years. Of course the story stopped at that table and never once followed him to Chile. His real ending sat in a stranger's drawer for 30 years, mislabeled, waiting for one person to look closely. And when somebody finally did, it was the exact opposite of everything we'd been told. He didn't lose himself on that table in 1848. He spent the rest of his life finding his way back.